Barry Silverberg, Director of the Center for Nonprofit Studies at Austin Community College, and welcome to Civil Society, where we explore issues affecting our communal well-being through a nonprofit lens. We're a proud partner of ACC TV, but given COVID-19, we continue to operate virtually for this, our 5th season. This episode is part of our series on the Asian Pacific Islander experience in Austin, which includes people from at least 25 countries who represent 40 different ethnic groups. This diverse community makes up at least 8% of the Austin population and is growing rapidly. Asian Americans are often overlooked. Partly this can be attributed to the, quote, model minority myth, the assumption that all Asians are wealthy and highly educated and therefore not needing social services. But income and education within the Asian community varies. Immigrants coming for professional opportunities and refugees starting from scratch are often lumped together in the common mind. Also, language can be a barrier for people trying to access social services. My guest today is Fang, CEO of the Greater Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber's mission is to promote the Asian Pacific American community and community at large as a catalyst for local and global economic growth through advocacy, connections, and education. It fulfills that mission through advocacy initiatives, through connection events, and education programs. Fang assumed the Chamber's leadership just 5 months ago. What a timing. During the COVID-19 pandemic. She replaced Marina Bargova, who led the Chamber for 7 years and helped grow the Chamber from 100 to 590 members during her tenure. Fang has a diverse background in journalism, government, an entrepreneur, and in nonprofits. She was most recently a liaison of the U.S. Census Bureau and Austin Travis Complete Count Committee, a collaborative effort to ensure a complete and accurate count of the Austin area population in the 2020 decennial census. Before that, Fang was the founder of a media startup, as well as a co-founder of a tech startup in supply chain optimization. She also worked with the consulting firm Edelman in New York City and the news agency Voice of America in Washington, D.C. Fang serves on the board of organizations that promote economic development and seek to elevate the Asian American Pacific Islander communities locally and nationally. Of course, all this begs, do you have any free time? Welcome, Fang.
Thank you, Barry. Hi, everyone.
Before we go any further, why don't you tell us a little bit about Fang?
Sure. This is always the hardest question. I feel like it's so open-ended and there's so many labels that you can add to yourself. You mentioned a little bit of my career path. So what can I add? I was born and raised in China, and I came to US relatively late for my master's in international journalism. So what motivated me to come to US was I wanted to figure out how democracy worked because it didn't work back in China, and I was trying to think, okay, what's the better alternative and why? And America was the answer. So I came here, studied journalism, became a journalist covering the Congress in DC, and really got to know, by starting to learn all the more than 500 congressmen, right? To learn the system. And that gave me a really deep understanding, appreciation, but also a opportunity to look back and compare what my belief was about the Chinese system. So that was a quite interesting time. And I moved on to New York, covering the news in the New York area and international relations. It brought me to the startup journey that I had, and I spent a year in Latin America and Asia to learn the local market and then get familiarized with the local startup scenes. And when I decided to come back to the US, Austin was still the good choice, the best choice, because I moved from New York to Austin and moved on to the international journey. I could have moved anywhere when I decided to come back to the US, but Austin was just like that home. So I decided to come back. And then I was looking for the opportunity, and then decennial census, as you mentioned, came up. I was working in building a partnership with the local government, business, the nonprofit, educational organizations. So that is my purpose, was through that opportunity that I could really learn how the central policy can trickle down to the local level, and how the local level come together and work it out. So that I really learned tons over there too. And that lends me the opportunity to get really know the Asian communities, and which led me to this position. So that's the career. And I think what motivated me is just curiosity and learning. So I would, if I add any label for myself, I think that would be the label. On the besides the career side, personally, I'm a global nomad. Uh, uh, Obviously, yeah, traveling, love traveling. That's just in my DNA. So pandemic is extremely hard for me. And other than that, I love yoga. I love salsa dancing, and all of them are impaired by the pandemic. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in doing the census work,
yeah.
what were the, are there special challenges in making sure that the Asian community is counted?
Tremendously. When we started this whole nationwide approach, right, to reach out to the partner, build the partners, and rely on the partners to reach out to their constituents, there was a census study that analyzed each race, and then their prediction, the study's outcome, the result was the Asian Americans are least likely to participate in 2020 census, based on all the historic data and barriers. Um, the good surprise is after that motivation, after that awareness, with the help of the entire community, that really brought community together. And by the end of the census, we actually surpass all other races and become the highest self-responded race in the nation and in our area.
What are some of the challenges?
First of all, what's obvious is language, right? If you have not, you cannot even receive any resources, information in your language to help to understand, to be aware. That's a number one barrier. And two, Asians are very diverse. And then when they, almost half them are like immigrants. So when they came here, they have, like me, they have the legacy understanding that carried away from their own countries. So there are distrust in the government, distrust in the federal programs, and that could be another big barrier as well. And those are the two. And then, given how diverse, it's not like this Asian automatically knows that Asian. It's like, as you mentioned, there are 20 some languages, ethnicities, each one has their own unique culture. So we have to find the right organizations and right gatekeepers to help us to reach out to there. Yeah.
So is there fear on the part, or reticence on the part of the immigrants to participate in a quote government activity?
Was there or is there?
Well, both.
Um, it's like, if you're, think about it, how do you adopt it, the values that you're holding nowadays? It's
Mhm.
from your upbringing, from your family, from your community,
Right.
from your education. If that's like half of your life or majority of your life, and then it's not going to be easy to click, just because we're saying this is good for you. This government is different, right? So we saw that even the election result from the Cuban Hispanic in Florida, right? So you would think that as an immigrant, they are more pro-democratic, but they're not. But what is that distinct? It's like if someone lived in the through the communism, through that fear, through that deep distrust, they don't want to repeat it, no matter how much you educate them with the fact and data. And that was a similar issue that when we were meeting, going to the Vietnamese immigrants, and then they would have the natural and then deep believed distrust.
So clearly, and you've made reference to this obviously in terms of the inability to travel, which I share with you. We do a lot of international traveling, and it's terrible not to be able to do that right now. But again, those are first world problems compared to some real problems real people have, or a lot of people have. During this COVID-19, a former president called it the China virus, and stirred up enormous prejudice and so forth. Is that a factor here in Austin? Are Asians facing or continuing to face prejudice because of the characterization of the pandemic?
The short answer is yes, right? If the whole group is labeled with this negative label, it's inevitably causing the damage. If you remember the Vincent, in Michigan, and then he was a Chinese American, but he was mistaken by Japanese when the car industry was really competitive, and then he got murdered. So that was the thing when this rationale becomes a negative towards a group, and when people just lost that that logic mind or an analysis, it's very dangerous, especially it's led by someone you're supposed to really trust. So yes, we have been, that's additional burden that we had to carry on top of the pandemic. Just because the way we look, you don't even need to be Chinese to receive that kind of racism. And then another difficulty is not that, it goes back to the fear that I was saying, because they are distrusting the system when they are receiving it. Some of them were kind of like used to it. So they are so timid and they don't know how to seek out for the help. They don't know who to trust. And then with the language barrier, they really just lost, they really just hide, but their fear is real and deep. My mom was an example. My mom was, she lives in Waco. And, after this, and then she was
That's scary in itself.
Yeah, but she survived the Waco. And when she encountered this, and she was really like, the fear was real. So when she went to HEB, she was like, very careful. And there was a one, she went to shopping during the lunch hour, and there was this white lady line up behind her. And then my mom noticed that she was really like kind of in a hurry, keeps looking at the watch. And then so my mom led her to go first with her broken English. And then so the lady was really appreciative. So by the time that my mom was checking out, the cashier told mom that that lady paid $20 for my mom's grocery. Yeah, that was such a gesture. My mom just broke down and started to cry, and then feel like that kind of a burden that deep buried in your and the fear that deep buried, and then this kind of nice gesture from the community. It's really
That's super. Let's shift from you and let's talk about your day job at the chamber. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of the chamber? I know that it connected I think it was the Texas Asian Chamber with the local chamber. Can you talk a little bit about the history and what the chamber does?
Right. So the history is there were two Asian chambers at a time. And then they were having their own program. They were both relatively, small, and then they'll have their signature events, and they were operating totally differently. And then After a while, there might be some area of a competition, and it really doesn't make sense for a small places to, like Austin, especially back then, for the Asian community to have a similar organization. So the chairs and leaders from the two organizations came together and reached an agreement to merge the two into nowadays Greater Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce to really facilitate and then serve the Asian business community and the communities with the Asian ties. So that's what's driven us today. And, it's really, I just wanted to point out, it's really not that easy. So looking back right now, it feels like, oh, okay, let's merge. But that was going through a lot of designing. And what we see nowadays, there are few Pan-Asian organizations in town. So Austin Chamber is the Pan-Asian organization that's focused on the business development, serving the business community. There is Asian American Resource Center serving the cultural needs for the community. And there is a network of the Asian American organizations, which is more into policy and advocacy. So these doesn't happen just by coincidence. It's really designed and planned by titans, like what I mentioned. These titans who had the vision to keep the Asian community together from day one through different organizations. And then that's really still the unique part about Asian communities in Austin. I mentioned that I moved from DC to New York to Austin, so I had this comparative perspective. Asian Americans here in Austin is fastest growing population. As a matter of fact, we just surpassed the African American population, but still relatively small enough to consider as an Asian identity. If you do it in New York, it's just too massive to organize anything like Asian related, right? So we have this unique position, and we're very well integrated with the local government. Our chamber oftentimes is the channel to relay what's our community's concerns and asks back to the local government, state government. So especially when they are opening up the market safely during the pandemic, they wanted to pass through the resources. Yeah, so I feel like this is what the unique position that Asian Chamber is in right now, just being part of this designed system.
It's hard to bring people together with so many differences, and again, given the languages and cultures.
Right.
I don't envy you and your colleague's job. One of the things that the chamber provides is a lot of information on the Asian community. And we have links to that on our website for people who go up and will watch this episode. Talk a little bit about the services that the chamber provides, both to the general community about the Asian American community and to Asian business, which I assume is the primary reason you exist.
Yes. You're absolutely right. And then you also mentioned the three pillars, how we serve our communities. It's through connection, education, and advocacy. So in connection, we have a lot of like member mixers and annual member meetings, women's club, mentorship program, ambassador programs to and then routine referral when someone needs some kind of service. So that's how we connect people. And educational, and we organize workshops and seminars. For example, the PPP loan, the forgiveness of that, and then the certificate for the minorities and women-owned businesses on the routine basis. And we invite the experts, like how to market your places. So those are the educational events we routinely organize. And advocacy is the part that we are trying to strengthen. But to do it better, we need to know our members better, so that when someone said, how can we help with the Asian community, we should know what the struggles and bottlenecks and pains that our community, our businesses are facing, to more effectively relay the problem and connect them to the right resources. So these are the three vision and pillars that guide us to either design our programs and events or refine, guide our day-to-day activity. And you mentioned the information about Asian community on our website, on your website. That's actually the first step. When I started to reach out to the Asian community on the census outreach, the Asian Chamber website was the place that I found some of the basic statistics to know who are there, how many of them in each ethnicities, and what are the major organizations within each ethnicity. And I started to reach out there, and of course reach out to the Asian Chamber as the first step, and they helped me to connect me to many other Asian organizations. So I'm like in debt for the Asian Chamber, but that also gives me that understanding that how Asian Chamber was that hub, that window to provide anyone who wants to get to know Asian community here. We can provide you the information, the resources, or the connection and network.
Well, I just think it's important to underscore what you just said, is that the Chamber is more than just about, quote, business. It's really about promoting relationships and so forth. But during the current pandemic, I understand that there was an effort within the Asian community to use contacts that various members had back in China and possibly elsewhere to obtain personal protective equipment for first responders. And I don't think many people know that story. Could you share a little bit about that? What took place and how it evolved and what happened?
Yeah, so when the pandemic first hit, if you remember, there was a kind of like a delay because it happens in China and Asia, and then it came, to Europe, and it came to the US. So there was a delay, and the Asian communities are more aware of the damage or severity of this pandemic. So when it hits our US land, we were already kind of brainstorming of we need to do something, and we really need to do something for our community at large in Austin. And if you remember back then, masks were really hard to secure. Even in China, because of the damage of the supply chain, right? The manufacturers are not making them anymore, and most of them are located in China. So even in China, the masks were sold pretty expensively through black market even. So that was the time when our community, Asian community in Austin, just organically come together under the leadership of, again, these titans. If you get to know the community, you'll know there's a group of people just want, the goodness of the entire community. So we come together. We have launched this relief fund, the COVID-19 relief fund, and we raised $120K. And then secured 240,000 masks at that time, and we distributed. Everyone was in volunteering and driving and dropping it to the frontline workers during that time, and that was quite a moving and touching moment. That obstacles and big disasters like this bond the community together in the way that was so touching and so effective. So that was quite an experience, and the Asian Chamber was one of the major organizers in that. And Barry, I wanted to also touch upon what you were saying, that people like Austin Chamber is not, Asian Chamber is not only a business association. You're absolutely right. And then the reason behind it is, again, the unique Asian culture. So when we did one of our member survey, right, what are the reasons that you join Asian Chamber? We would think business association would say, promote my business or connect me to other businesses, of course. And then the third reason is the community. So if you think about it, like in China or in Asia, if you have a park, people just organically gather there and hang out, right? Even in New York, the park, like people go there and then play chess and then play Tai Chi, and they just need that kind of community atmosphere, and then this platform, this hub that provide them this opportunity. So Asian Chamber sounds like a business association, but if you think about it, the Chamber of Commerce, the concept is not that quite as familiar by the Asian community. So they view this more of a platform, a hub, that if they don't know something, if they want to be connected, if they wanted some resources they need help with, they always come to us, no matter is business related or not. So that's what we are doing. Yeah,
the nonprofit arena, we call that information and referral.
yeah,
Absolutely. So talk a little bit about the Asian American business scene here in Austin. A sense of how many businesses there are. And let me ask you also, as you talk about that, a very specific question. In interviewing the chamber executives from the Black Chamber and the Hispanic Chamber, both spoke of having their members, their businesses, Black and Asian, Black and Hispanic business, having difficulty getting loans from banks and accessing the benefits which Congress previously made available. Does the Asian business have the same kind of challenges?
Yes, yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, there was a McKinsey's report researching on the Asian American business recovery after the COVID-19. And the study find, I think it was 75% of the Asian American businesses were not able to get the loan because they were lack of the existing relationship with financial institutes. Right. So that was, if you don't have, like, that's a requirement for PPP loan. If you didn't have it and you didn't know how to build one, or you couldn't secure one in time, that's of course hindering you to getting the loan. We also hear the how complicated the paperwork, and we, our staff spend literally 2 hours holding hands to our members to walk them through the process. That's also another tangible difficulty that prevent Asian community to get the loan. And I'm sure we're not alone, as you pointed out. Minorities having that issues, it's just not readily available. So we need a lot of assistance in the way and connections in the raising awareness of these resources to begin with.
What do you think the average Austinite, myths and facts, what do you think the average Austinite knows about Asians, and more importantly, from your point of view, what they should know about Asian Americans in Austin? Aside from your diversity, obviously, that comes as a shock to a lot of people, but.
Yes, I would say they don't know, average Austinite don't know enough to even have an opinion of positive or negative.
Good point. Good point.
If I asked you to list, asked you or average Austinite to list 5 cities in China, would you be able to list them?
I could make them up.
So yeah, so usually like Beijing, Shanghai, and then Hong Kong, and then they were not even sure
And
that's
of course,
part of
Wuhan. Nobody, everybody knows Wuhan.
Wuhan now. Yes, that's a top five now. So like I feel like they just don't have enough knowledge to form any kind of opinions, which is not not their entirely their fault, right? So it's everything, like what do you hear every day, how do you receive your information? If it's all about mainstream and it's never paid attention to this group of people, where do you learn? It's not like everyone every day has like a 2 hours set aside just to learn things that they don't know. I hope that's the case, but average us probably don't do that. So it's not that. So we realize this kind of a disconnection, or even our sponsors who come with really good intentions and said, we want to help, or we wanted to understand more of the Asian community, and then even compared to the Black community, Hispanic community, we have even less understanding of who the Asians are here and what's your struggles, what's your advantage. So part of our initiative for this year and next year is to really tell the Asian stories, to raise to provide that information, provide that awareness through annual landscape report, where you said, incorporated with the census data that's going to come out this year, who we are, how many of us, what's the top 5 Asian ethnicities within Austin, what's the top, like in terms of the revenues, what industries are their business in, right? And what's the purchase power, all this, because first of all, we lack of the data about Asian community. Second of all, we lack of the disaggregated data within the Asian, because and now that we are the most diverse, so we're lacking a lot. So we're making that effort. Hopefully Asian Chamber can provide that data. And when we have the data, in fact, that's easier to guide anyone who wants to do something, who wants to engage or initiate some kind of programs, events, to be able to rely on. So that's what we want to do in the hard data fact ways, and also the soft storytelling ways. Have you heard of the Humans of New York?
What?
Humans of New York?
Humans of New York. I'm from New York, and I know there are no humans in New York.
Yeah, so you know how colorful they are, and then this photographer, just roam around in the street and take people's picture, and those picture alone is very powerful, and very real. And then he would just include a quote from this person to tell their stories through their own words, right? So that was when I saw those pictures, as a journalist in me, but like was so powerful and so inspiring. So that's what we wanted to do this year, that we wanted to do Asians of Austin, to tell the stories of who are we, like tell the stories, tell the diversities through these stories, through these personal relatable stories. And not only Asian, not only our members, but like Asians, people like Austinites with the Asian tie. There was this lady, Miss Jones, who were very supportive. She's an attorney. She joined almost all the minority chambers. And then she was like, you know what, this Asian chamber is just like having this way to really break down the information and make it into a very actionable item for me to follow up. And I don't know why, but I found it's very effective. And when I go to there, even if I'm not Asian, I feel welcome and friendly. So things like this, we want them to tell their stories, right? And then another initiatives that we're thinking is, if average Austinite care about Asian, the first thing would be from food. So I have my friends always asking me which Chinese restaurant should I go to, which Indian restaurant should I go to. So we see the demand, Well, we organized the night market before the COVID, and it was quite a surprise. Like a pleasant surprise. 20,000 people showed up, and
Wow.
there was like a logistic nightmares, parking, cashier, but we saw the demand. And this time around, when the pandemic hit, one of the most hit industry is the food and restaurant industry, and that is a large part of our membership. So we need to do something. We want to do something for them, and we need to do it quickly before they were forced to permanently closed. So we are thinking of a night market point 2.0, the Asian Restaurant Week. So we're gonna do some kind of the designing structure, like a Chinese Monday, Indian Tuesday, Vietnamese Wednesday, or something like that, and we help them to market, because that's the top one difficulty that we heard from our members. They don't know how to market, they don't have the capacity to do it. So we help them market this opportunity and bring the traffic to their restaurant during the restaurant week and even beyond it. If we see the demand, if we see that integration, if we provide this platform, I'm sure the average Austinite would love to engage. It's not like they're resisting. It's just like a lack of the platform opportunity like this. So if it's good, and we'll do it every year.
Well, I'm excited by your enthusiasm about it. Let me turn or stay on the question of people understanding and knowing about Asians, because what opportunities are there in Austin to learn about the Asian heritage?
Mm.
I know the university has a Center on Asian Studies,
Mhm.
but if I, as an Austin citizen, want to go out there and learn about, the history of the Asian community,
Mhm.
um, are there sites to visit? Are there experiences to be had aside from eating my way through the Asian experience?
Yeah, you've touched upon on some good spots. The UT, so it's from like an academic area, and they are part of integrated in our community. So they would be able to refer you to the different organizations. And the Asian supermarket, Ranch 99, MT, H Mart. And like H Mart is becoming just the supermarket, beyond just the supermarket. There was a stage, there's like a culture, K-pop, the culture exchange. So that attracts a lot of the younger generations of Austinites that's non-Asian. So these are the places to start to emerge or get in touch with this culture. But organizations like us, like Pan Asian, Asian Chamber, the Asian American Resource Center, that's really about the culture and exchange, right? So if they provide a yoga class, Tai Chi class, they provide some kind of and we work with them, collaborate with them to provide some business information, seminars, the educational workshop that I mentioned, we collaborate with them to provide those informations to the community, no matter you're Asian or non-Asian. And hopefully these kind of initiative that I mentioned, when we roll them out, that will give some opportunities offline and online for the average, for the non-Asian community to involve, to interact. And that's what we want. I think that's one of the myths, is that Asians always gather together. It's not like it's more of our culture being a little bit timid or shy, some of them, than being resistant. So if we have those bridge, then it's just, I'm sure you'll feel that most of the Asian cultures, Asian people are very welcoming, very friendly.
So, in terms of, to bring our conversation to a close, I guess, there are a lot of people out there who probably do and will see you as a role model. Younger Asian females, as well as Asians in general. So, what lessons learned, what hard-earned wisdom can you share with others that would help them to be as successful and as articulate as you are about your work?
Um, that's flattering, and I was, it's not every day that I feel like. So if I can be any kind of a help or inspiration through my failures or through my insecurity, and then you mentioned that I'm articulate, but English is not even my first language, and I had the fear and the struggles, and even I still do. So that not so confident, worry about, is this what I really think? Do I express it, and does it convey it precisely? I feel a lot of this hold backs, no matter it's from language perspective, from your just the insecurity front. I feel like those are not as important as you felt, and I'm sure the younger people are felt that more often. It's just a phase of a life. um, don't let that um, perceived difficulty deter you, and then fear you, and then just it's propelled by your curiosity and by your thirst to learn, and then focus on that. Even if there's failure, it might not be failure. It's because it's just learning opportunity. If you view that way, and then you don't have to pay attention other than that. Just focus on that, and you'll take the risk and take the learning, stay curious, and then you'll be fine.
That's a great way to end. Listen, thank you very, very much, Fang Feng. Thank you for watching and participating in civil society. And you've been a delightful interview, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. And you may take this as flattery, but I think it's a fact. And your charisma. I think you are a superb representative of the chamber.
Thank you so much.
And so thank you all for watching and participating in civil society. And as always, thanks to Kate Tolliver, our managing producer, for her support. You can read more about Fung Fung and the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce and the issues we just discussed, and access some of the resource materials they make available, and view previous and future episodes of Civil Society at nonprofitaustin.org/civil society. Please have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you next episode. Thank you all.